have spared your invaluable time to come and participate in this session. I also thank this association, which is a very newly emerging body, and to grow and nurture critical thinking perspective in the area of different fields of social sciences and sciences. I wish them best of luck. And since I work in NCERT in the last two decades in the area of school curriculum, I thought in those areas which I have some expertise, so that I can share my anguish or my anxiety, how this new education policy will have in the forthcoming uh, uh, years. And I worked in NCERT since 2002. I chose this area of school curriculum because uh, I joined in 2002 when the NDA one was in power. Actually, if you look at and then then you also know that UPA came into being for 10 years, and then again NDA 2 regime is going on now. And all over the world, school curriculum is always under the regulation of the government. This is my broad hypothesis. There are with which I argue my work actually. So since it is a democratic government has the responsibility to shoulder the responsibility of educating its citizens. There's always, whether it is in the USA or in many other countries, the government regulates the school curriculum. So whatever the policy suggestions are coming from the government will have a serious implications on the curriculum that we are all going to evolve in India. That's one point. So these are my, like, as though I went through the national education policy the 2-3 times when it was in draft format, and then in the official capacity we have reviewed comments from almost 2-3 lakh people who have expressed various dimensions of the education policy. So I also want to demystify certain notions about the new education policy. Okay. And then my focus will be more on the school education, but I cannot stop looking at the other component, higher education, because that is also that has more to offer. At least in my view, I would say that the new education policy has more to offer for the higher education system. And please, I also want to give a point here that this is my personal view, and whatever I'm sharing, these are all my personal reflections, and it does not reflect with the organization that I work with right now. Okay. So when I look at the new education policy, whether it is a draft policy which was there introduced almost 1 year before, and then the new policy, I would see that the major implications of the policy is lying on the higher education system, major restructuring. And even though the new education policy envisages that by the 2030 to 40, during this period, we can relook at our education policy. But I have a feeling that true implementation brings the fruition of this new education policy, at least to 2050, we may be able to see some glimpses of the dream envisaged by the new education policy. So in that sense, I can see a long-term driven thing. It's also because the way it is perceived now, the kind of dreams that it is giving before us to start thinking about it. Okay, so it is having more to offer in the higher education system than in the school education system, if you look at the components. And we also come to know that, like, for example, people say that the new education policy 96 is a very small, thin document, whereas the new education policy is a large document. Who will be reading? When the draft was introduced, it was about 400 pages. People were really worried why this is such a long document. But if I'm showing you, my dear friends, if you look at the old policy, it maybe look very thin, and if you look at long term, maybe like it may be looking what do you call it? Okay, so I can set it later, but this is the small about 50-page document, exactly 50-page document. In each page about some 10 to 15 lines are there. Okay, if you look at the the National Policy in Education 1986, whereas this document has a 66-page document totally, and every page has about almost like 30 30 lines, not 10 lines, 30 lines. Relatively, this may look like a very dense document. But if you look at, if I see carefully, you can see this, you see the document. You may not be seeing this. Um, if you see this document, actually, like this will be literally a big document. Okay. And this is a document which is also called as program of action. Okay, so it's called program of action, means this also has a 200-page document. If you look at all the pages document, so 1996 policy is also relatively a big document. So it is not a thin document what you are seeing. So many governments formulate a policy document which is relatively thin, and then the document, the program of action, which is relatively large actually. Whereas in the new policy, the 66 pages, a lot of new things have happened actually. So that is why I would legitimate that this document is warranted, because the education system of India is the biggest in the world actually. We have a 15 lakh schools, 40,000 colleges, nearly 1,000 universities. Almost like a 3.5 crore children are studying in higher education institutions, not children, adults. And 27 crore students are studying in schools actually. It is such a big system. We need a radical rethinking, radical shifting, taking about nuanced aspects actually. Okay, so in that sense, I would say that this is a very new, fresh start. I also feel that nowhere in the world you have an education system in which such a large section of students are studying in private institutions. India is the unique country in which the private sector plays very crucial role nowhere in the world, whether it is school education or higher education system. So maybe Venkatraman can also share. Is this, if I'm wrong, and or if given his global experiences, he can also share if I'm wrong. Otherwise, you will find globally public sector government education is the major chunk. Whereas in India, it is emerging now that 78% of the colleges in India are owned by the private, not-for-profit organizations. So in that sense, for such a big country, but big complex system, this kind of document is not such a big thing. It is a necessary, and that's one thing. Secondly, I also see that this document is trying to be, in my view, a bit of apolitical. At the same time, it's also political. I would say why, how it is political or how is apolitical. It is highly political because the entire national policy education does not have a word on secularism. Secularism is not appearing even a single time in this document. So in that sense, I would say it's also it's communicating to us some politics. Okay, it is also apolitical in the sense that there are many ideas which are suggested are very ideal, and it does not take into consideration of the nature of the society with which we live. So in that sense, it appears the kind of structures that are evolved seems to be apolitical actually. Okay, but whereas on certain notions, the term history is appearing only twice in the entire document. Okay, and the constitution is appearing about 5 to 6 times only. So in that sense, it's very political in its own way, presenting the ideas, and it's also apolitical or attempting to be apolitical in terms of providing alternatives, providing institution structures. My anxiety to this idea of school education, why I chose the school education. See, this is something people are all saying that 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 is something very new. Yes, in case of India, it may look very new. But if you look at the way, whether have we implemented 10 plus 2 plus 3, we do not have a satisfactory answer. Then how we are going to implement 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, we need to see, wait and watch. I'll tell you, if you look at school education system is concerned, we know that like in many states like Tamil Nadu or say Delhi, you will have a 10 plus 2. Whereas if you look at many states like Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, you have system called junior college system or intermediate system. And if you look at the nature of schooling system, we know that there are private schools which are having 1 to 5 or 1 to 12 or LKG, UKG plus 12. But if you look at UDES data, which says that there are 10 kind of schools prevailing in India, 10 kind of schools. Classes 1 to 12, classes 6 to 12, classes 1 to 5, classes 6 to 10. In Andhra, it is 11 and 12 alone as a school system. And there are some school junior colleges which are also housing undergraduate courses. And then there are schools which are having only 9 to 12. And there are schools, middle schools, we all know that 6 to 8. And there are some schools in Uttarakhand, Jharkhand, you have only 9th and 10th only. So if this is the kind of complexity which prevails even after 40 years of 10 plus 2 plus 3 is coming, so how we are going to enforce the 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4? How are we going to communicate to the states that please implement this 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 system? Secondly, now in many states, children are joining when they are age 3, and then class at the age of 5, they are going to class 1. That means around 17 years, most of them, after completing 17, they finish their class 12. Now, the new policy envisages 3 years of early child care education, plus KG1, KG2, KG3, and then they go to class 1, 2. This may look new for India, but for many countries like US or UK and Europe, many countries, this is not something new. In Finland, children are going to class 1 when they are in class 7. Actually. Okay, so this is going to delay or extend the schooling period by 1 year. That is one major implications. And in my view, it is good for the country. It is good in the interest of children's development. So in that sense, actually, children will have a relatively more longer period in the house, in the school system, rather than becoming laborers or child laborers when they are very young. Okay, because today only about 20 people out of 100 who join the school, they are going to college. The rest of the 18, they are all taking jobs. Out of 40, like for example, if there are 100 children joining school, about 60 people, almost 60 people dropped out when they are in class 10. Okay, only 40 or 45, they attend the class 11 and 12. Okay, so this is the situation. Okay, so this is going to extend 1 more year. And it is in the case of employment situation, we know, see, new education policy is not going to solve all the problems. We also have to find solutions for the new education policy in other sectors. For example, if employment generation is going to take place in a rigorous manner, in a large scale manner, and then all the coaching classes, the menace of the coaching classes will be getting addressed. Okay, so I would say that new education policy may dream many things, but it depends on what is happening in other sectors. For example, the sector of labor, sector of agriculture, sector of infrastructure. Okay, so whatever is happening in those sectors will have implications on the implementation of the new education policy, or even dreaming about what is shown in the new education policy. So in that sense, the structure may be looking very attractive, but how we are going to convince the states? For example, how are you going to convince Karnataka that please do away with the junior college system, make 9, 10, 11, 12 into a school system? How they are going to build a new structure? In that sense, new education policy very conveniently negates that you don't have to change for the infrastructure level. Infrastructure, you don't have to change. You keep the infrastructure as it is. It is clearly worded there actually. I can quote certain areas. Okay, so in that sense, actually, I'm quoting from page number 47, section 4.3. The above described stages are purely curricular and pedagogical. ... Parallel changes in physical infrastructure will not be required. So how come without physical infrastructure, changes in the physical infrastructure, you are going to build the new system? So that is one major issue that I have feeling. And secondly, if you look at the, I would say that the school curriculum, the syllabus, yes, compared to higher education system in India, school education system, we have established, not only because I work in NCERT, we have a national institution which is giving a model syllabus. Based on the model syllabus, you have all the states which can evolve their own syllabus. Okay, so in case of school education system, you already have a system, and then that system will take care of the formulation of syllabus and formulation of model textbooks. There is some system in the country. But in case of higher education, I see a very, very, very radical positive change, positive suggestions given here. See, today hundreds and hundreds of new private institutions are coming, but we did not have any regulation. We did not have any laws that are to be formulated to regulate the education system in the country. So in that case, I would see that in the higher education system, 4 parallel structures are suggested. Mail, you can suggest me 5 minutes before when I want to complete my presentation. Okay. Yeah. I would say that in case of higher education system, the policy very clearly states that there will be 4 parallel bodies will be formulated. National Higher Education Regulatory Council, National Accreditation Council, Higher Education Grants Council, and General Education Council. So these all 4 are, in my view, excellent structures, and for which the government has to formulate new law. In case of school education system, we are not getting very same kind of complete structure. For example, the assistant education officer in your village or in your small town will have his own academic role also. He will have all the administrative role also regulating it. He will have all the administrative academic role, and also he will have all the powers in the school system. Okay, now the new education policy, even though it is specifying the Directorate of School Education in one body, there's a new body setting standards. There is a new regulatory body is going to set up. So how they are going to work parallelly, that is yet to be seen. So I don't see big change in the case of changes in the case of school education as far as these kind of structures are concerned. Okay, and we know that, for example, in Tamil Nadu, there was a matriculation schools. For matriculation school, there is a separate set of organizations were established. Okay, now they were merged together. So in that sense, how they are going to establish the new structures for school curriculum or school administration or for setting standards or accreditation. So in that sense, I'm not getting very convincing structure for the school education system. Then I'll come to one more issue where there is also newspaper may very frequently I'm getting this new education policy with regard to one controversial issue of 3-language formula. All the states except Tamil Nadu follows 3-language formula, but many of the states are following very conveniently this 3-language formula. For example, most of the North Indian states, including Odisha, you will find Sanskrit is taken up. Sanskrit is taken up a 3rd language. Whereas the 3-language formula, when it was conceived, it was told that you can choose any languages which in the interest of the nation. Okay, so 3-language formula, to sum it up, it is not chosen, it is not identified by the states in the general interest of learning some other neighborhood language, including Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Kerala. All those 4 states, they have chosen Hindi rather than choosing Tamil as a 3rd language. So in that sense, the 3-language formula suggested in the new format is giving freedom to choose. But is Tamil Nadu ready to choose the new language? No, it is still hanging on the 2-language formula only. But we know that thousands of people, lakhs of people are living in Tamil Nadu, speaking in Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada, and they can be provided the opportunity to learn their language in a formal manner. So we also have to see from that angle. For that purpose, new policy is very relevant. It says that any language you choose, but it should be native of India. That's one sense. Okay. And then in case of syllabus and textbook development, they are suggesting, the new policy is suggesting that it should have a very important concept, core concept only. Okay. So we are expecting that the textbook will have a very small textbooks. But if you look at the reality is that after children passing out from class 12, they have to apply for the admission to the higher education institutions. Okay. So whenever there is an examination system, the National Testing Agency is very, very rightly isolated from the UGC and CSIR. In that sense, CBSE. So having an autonomous body is a very good thing. I am very happy about it actually. But now centralizing all the admission process in the whole country will have advantages and also disadvantages. What are the advantages? Students need not have to apply for many institutions in different websites. It's really painful. But on the other hand, how are we going to have one common curriculum for the whole country? For example, if I'm studying economics in Delhi in a higher secondary, and the whole country will have to study economics in the same fashion in the entire country. The testing will be based on the economic syllabus by CBS. So in this way, you will find the local content will lose their relevance. You know that after the NEET has become compulsory, in Tamil Nadu and many states, more and more schools are going, even the ICSE board schools are going for CBSE. Okay. So I would, my apprehension and people's apprehension that the more and more centralization is taking place. Uh, I also agree with that apprehension. And I'm sure that this will be taken by the states also very seriously. The issue of concurrent list is what is the role of the state in all these bodies, higher education bodies, it's not very clear. So with this, I'll let me conclude my presentation and hope that you will be sharing your suggestions and your views and your questions with regard to whatever the idea that I shared right now. And kindly excuse me for initial hiccups.